like a Hellcat.
So even in, because folks look, people who want sort of county by county or say, you know, well, let's get back online faster, say, well, look, in some states there's less than 200 cases. In many states there's less than 200 cases right now. You're saying even in those states, the same kind of shutdown needs to occur?
Well, let's say you have 100 cases, and let's say you don't do a shutdown, then it grows 33% per day. So you take 100, you get 1,000, you get 10,000. It's exponential growth. If you're not stopping it, the sooner you engage in the shutdown, the easier it is to get to that peak. We have not peaked. You know, the parts of the country that aren't shut down, in late April, we should start to see the numbers peak there. They'll still be too high to open up. So you'll probably have to go another month to really get those numbers down. But any part of the country that has cases, and truthfully, because of our problems with testing, because we're not prioritizing testing the right way, that a lot of those places actually do have cases. But even if they have the 100, that will grow, and people do cross county boundaries. And so basically the whole country needs to do what was done in the part of China where they had these infections.
Yeah, and it's worth pointing out again that states that had just a few cases last week have, you know, over 1,000 or sometimes 2,000 cases this week, to your point, Bill. The other thing I'm curious about, you know, we keep hearing that the virus is going to dictate the timeline. Dr. Fauci has said that. When you look at this virus, we got 3.5 months worth of data now, 150 countries. If you apply all the analytics that Microsoft, all the analytics that we can possibly apply to this, is how this is going to sort of progress and end knowable? I mean, can you give a clear answer depending on what sort of mitigation measures we have in place?
It's very likely that rich countries who uniformly throughout their country do a serious shutdown, that they will be able to avoid a high percentage of their population getting infected. That's what the exemplars, like some of the work in China and South Korea, are telling us. Now, as you get to poorer countries, the difficulty of doing the isolation, where you live close by in slums, where you have to go out every day to get your food, it is going to be much, much tougher. And so, by summer, I think the rich countries that have been competently led on this will not have to go back into shutdown. And, from the disease point of view, they'll avoid very large numbers of deaths. And so in that phase, we still will have a challenge with the developing countries.
One of the things that Dr. Fauci actually said in our last hour, which really concerned me, and I was asking him about the states that, I think there's more than a dozen or so that have just 100 or 200 reported cases. He was saying how it's critical that, that those states, that they have testing there, that they test, and that they do contact tracing of all those who are known to be infected to really, right now, when the numbers are still low, track it all. And then I asked him, he was using a lot of future verbs about things needing to happen or plans. It didn't sound like, I asked him if it was actually happening now. He said it needs to happen a lot more. From what you're saying, it's got to be happening right now, because if there's not that contact tracing in places where it seems like it hasn't really hit, we're going to see it hit.
That's right. I mean, we wish that we'd shut down even sooner in places like New York. Then you would have not had the medical overload that is such a huge challenge for them. Unless you're going to partition the country, the whole country has to be in this together. And we're not, I don't see us making people not cross county lines or something like that. So it really is how many cases are in the country, and have we adopted in terms of testing prioritization, contact tracing, the right things. But the good news is we're seeing that countries that pay that price, which is a gigantic price, then the percentage of Chinese that are infected is like 0.01%. And so now, stores are open there and closed in the rest of the world. That's, I'm not sure you call it good news, but I totally agree with what Dr. Fauci said. He's been a very positive voice about the numbers driving this, and those numbers are very uncertain because of the still the disorganization of the testing capacity and where it's directed.
It strikes me that, I mean, you know the world of public health very well, and you know the world of the economy very well, financial world very well. They seem to be pitted against each other, and I don't really know much about the financial world at all, but I think there's this idea, Bill, that maybe you can be a little incremental here, right? Yes, we need to listen to the public health guidance and all that, but can we be a little incremental, start getting some things back to work, so that we don't, really devastate the economy that much? How do you respond to that?
Until we get the number of cases in the country down to small numbers where we can be doing testing and isolation against those small numbers, we need to make this our top priority. And it is super painful to drive this very high degree of social isolation I call shutdown. The middle course really isn't there, because it's hard to say, oh, go back to the theater for a week, maybe or maybe not you'll be infected or infecting people. Until we get the certainty we've hit these low numbers, I doubt, even if you told people that they should be buying new houses and cars and, hanging out in restaurants, I doubt they're going to want to do that. People want to protect older people, they want to protect their parents. And so the sooner we take this medicine, which is tough medicine, the sooner we'll be out of it and not have to go back into it again.
And just really quickly, when you say low numbers, I mean, are you talking about actual numbers, or are you talking about spread? Because this is a virus that can spread to 2 or 3 people. That's a lot. I mean, if it spreads just below one person, is that what you're talking about, or are you talking about actual numbers?
Well, the absolute numbers better be pretty low, because you're going to have the testing capacity to take the remaining positives, see them early, and so you're not getting that exponential spread. And that's why looking at the other countries who acted sooner and in some cases did not have to shut down to a full degree, that's where the lessons are. They can show us, okay, what was the medical history? So you see if asymptomatics are spreading. But yes, the absolute numbers are going to have to be fairly low, and we'll have some degree of caution. We won't open up completely overnight, and because we don't want quite the full exponentiation, even off of the small base that we'll get ourselves to.
I don't want to be political in any way, but just in terms of for folks who are out there, and looking forward, I always think it's better to know just factually what's coming down the pike than it's good to have hopes and aspirations, but it's good also to know what's actually coming down the pike. For people who are believing or imagining that, in middle of April or early April, people are going to be able to gather together in churches for Easter celebrations, or go back to work in a regular way. It's sounding like you're saying that's not. You don't believe that's realistic.
No, it's not realistic. The numbers are still going up. That only happens after the numbers have peaked and are going down a lot and getting down to an absolute level. There are some good things happening. The work on a vaccine, although that probably will take 18 months, that's going full speed ahead. Our foundation is funding that. We're looking at getting vaccines to everyone in the world. So in the long run, that is the key thing. We had a really positive result that people were wondering, did you have to have a medical person swab you in this way that they stuck it deep in your nose? We were able to prove, which on Monday the FDA made official, that if you do a self-test where you don't have to have the medical worker with personal protection equipment, that self-test is as accurate as the one where the medical worker gives it. So that means that by self-swabbing, we'll be able to get a lot more tests done. and only be limited by the PCR back-end capacity. So there's good news coming. One of the therapeutics, although none of them are proven out, but there are quite a few. We have a things the foundation created called the Therapeutics Accelerator to really look at thousands of compounds and make sure we focus the human trials on the ones that have the most promise. So, innovation, some of which we could have done in advance, but innovation really is happening. But, when you look at those numbers, the U.S., now with the most cases, there is no state that has gotten to the point where their numbers are flat and are going down. And the testing capacity means we're quite blind to a lot of these cases right now. So it can be done, but we're not, the light is not at the end of the tunnel in terms of a mid-April reopening.